go ahead and get started. And we'll start with Commissioner Lisa Cupid with
Oh,
the welcome and message, if you don't mind, Miss Cupid.
sure, certainly. Good morning, everyone. So happy that you're here with us for what I believe is our fifth annual HOA boot camp. I'm grateful for the HOA Alliance for their partnership in providing this training every year and all they do to help educate people involved with HOAs throughout the Metro Atlanta region. Um, as part of our effort, we dovetail into an annual program that they have bringing all HOAs together across the region. And again, I'm grateful for this program as a former HOA president who's, started on a board from a volunteer to secretary to president. I know all of the work that's involved when you step up to lead and volunteer in your community. And this is just one of the ways that I really enjoy giving back to ensure that you have some of the tools to help manage the role that you play in your community a little bit better than some of us did when we were starting in our HOAs and different leadership positions. Also glad to have with us Commissioner-elect for District 4, Monique Sheffield, who's helping to host today's program. She has done a phenomenal job as far as organizing the panels that we'll have here today to talk about various aspects of HOAs in community. And so I definitely want to make sure that I give her a shout out for all that she's done, not just this year. She's been involved in this from the first year that we've ever had this program.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also want to recognize you see on our screen Marvin Arrington with Fulton County and Correll Driscoll, who is with the HOA Alliance for all of their work in conceiving this idea from their involvement with HOAs and continuing to arm us with great information every year. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to you, Commissioner.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Cupid. It is truly a pleasure. I am Marvin Arrington Jr. I, along with Correll Driscoll, are the founders of the HOA Alliance. And we founded this alliance because we were having problems in our subdivision. And so we went looking for answers, and we found that the answers were in the subdivision next door to us and down the street from us. Fellow homeowners had solutions to our problems because they had experienced some of those same problems in their HOA. And so we went to next door, again, found some solutions, and just very excited about being able to help educate homeowners. We believe if the homeowners are educated, if the board is educated, then everyone will have a much better experience living in an HOA. Again, we're here, we're homeowners just like you, trying to help other homeowners be better neighbors, particularly when you have shared property like you do in an HOA or a condo association. Correll, you're muted.
Thank you, Commissioner Arrington. Commissioner-elect Sheffield, did you want to share any words this morning before we get started?
Yes.
Yeah, I just like to welcome everyone today. I know we have a lot of repeat guests today, so I really appreciate you guys showing up and supporting our effort year after year. So today is going to be a little different. Obviously, we are doing this virtually, and we have some housekeeping rules that I'll just kind of roll over really quickly. I don't see them on the screen, so I'll go based on memory. It will be a 30-minute session, so it's going to be a little bit like speed dating. So we're going to kind of push things along. We encourage you to drop your questions in the Q&A session at the bottom of your screen, and you also have the option there to raise your hand. So your questions will be incorporated in the respective subjects, but if not, then our panelists have agreed to hang on at the end of their session to answer the questions that are in the chat. So with that, I'm going to be the timekeeper, and most of you guys know I am a stickler for time, so just forgive me in advance if I rush you along. So we're going to get started with our first panel, and that's HOAs. That is self-managed versus property management companies. I too just quickly served as an HOA president, and much like Commissioner Cupid, I started out as a volunteer because there was a piece of trash and I just could not take it, so I got involved. And I started as a volunteer. Then, of course, once you're on the HOA, it's like you're sucked into this vacuum, and then you become the treasurer and then ultimately the president. So I served as president in 2 separate HOAs, and I'm also a real estate broker. So that's kind of the insight and the professionalism that I loan to this event. So let's get started. We have Carell Driscoll, who will loan his expertise on self-managed HOAs, and we also have Eric Jarrell, who represents Community Management Associates as a property management company. So they're going to share with us some of the pros and cons as it relates to having a self-managed HOA and a property managed HOA. So I'll turn it over to you guys.
All right. Eric, are you online?
Yes,
it's pretty broad, and we're going to just try to be as concise as we can. What I have up here is really a typical model that most are familiar with in reference to managing and operating a typical community association. I have that represented as an HOA. And typically we're accustomed to having a management company in the fray, and a management company generally manage all of these services that were surfaced during our transition with a management company. I know that's sort of small to read, but I put over here to the side the different areas of community association management. And in that operation, there's financial services, accounting services. I won't read them all because you can see it, and we'll make sure we make this slide set up as a handout. Legal services.
Actually, Carell, we cannot see it, so if you can take time to walk us through it.
Oh, well, I can share it. I just didn't share
Okay.
it.
All right.
Yeah, I apologize.
No problem.
Yeah, I'm a little clumsy more so now. Thank you. Can you see it now?
Yes, we certainly can. Thank you.
All right. And so these are just all of the different services that are broken up and provided as a part of an HOA management and operation. And so we broke them down like member services. You'll see maintenance services, communication, content management, vendor management. All of those different services are traditionally managed through a management company. That's the model that we're all familiar with. Well, here's what puts us at a disadvantage. As an HOA business, right, a not-for-profit or non-profit business, we don't maintain the relationships with the vendors that provide these different services, right? Because you're outsourcing everything in the traditional model. So it doesn't matter. All right. So let me move to the future model is what we ended up using. I went too far. All right. All right. So today's HOA management scope is based on, again, this is the self-management approach. The change HOA or community association manage all of these services on their own, meaning they pick the vendors that they want to outsource to. So say, for example, legal services versus going through the management company. Yeah, because today the management company managed the relationship with the legal services. Well, how about you as an HOA, you go out with the bid, identify the the attorney services or attorney company to take care of your legal services. Or if you have an attorney that live in your community and they're willing to work with you, they can help you with those legal services. You control the costs. There's no markup. That's all advantageous to your community association. The enforcement services, may be an area to outsource to a management company, or there's some dedicated enforcement services out there. Because if you go through the management company, there's going to be a markup. If you look at your contract closely, I know it was in our contract, they have language that says they have the right to make a profit. So you can see your price marked up 100%, or maybe a little short of that, or a little bit higher. Property management, it depends. If you have a clubhouse, you have a playground, etc., maybe that can be managed by someone internal, or a member of the board can manage the property management services. And in that, you're going to take advantage of the vendor services. That's where you see more of the cost saving as a self-managed community. You get to maintain your own relationship with the vendors. Because if you go through the management company, they're going to mark up the price so that they can make a profit. So I'm not speaking negatively of the management company. If you don't feel as a board that you can do the property management services, go ahead and use a management company for that. But of course, you're going to need a management company that's more a la carte. You can pick and choose which services you want to use. So I just wanted to show this. I call it a hybrid model because you, as a board, you determine which services you would bring in-house, and you determine which services will go out-house. So like, say, for example, I'm not cutting nobody's grass. I don't even cut my own grass, right? So you can outsource that. You can have that direct relationship, and I guarantee you the price will be a lot better, okay? Is Eric on board? Looking forward. I'll keep going if he's not here.
Corral,
Uh-huh.
can you resend Eric the link? He cannot sign on as a panelist. I'm pardon the interruption.
Okay. Yeah, I did with the just a few minutes ago. I resent it to everybody. So let me jump
Is
in
it
here.
Eric Jarrell?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let me see if I can promote it.
Okay. Thank you. So just keep in mind
He logged
that
off.
in order to understand the HOA or community association's operation, you need to break it down into small modular components. So accounting services, like sending out invoices, et cetera. As a self-managed community, we've identified or cloud services that will make this easy. And I'm using that loosely because nothing's easy with an HOA or a community association. You just have to make sure you wrap your head around each service, sit down, have a board discussion, and decide if it's going to be internal or external. But this only works if you're going to hire a management company, excuse me, if they are allowing you to pick and choose which services you want to use. Mr. Eric, are you speaking?
I'm texting him, and he's waiting on another link. So we really need to get that to him because I'd like for him to weigh in on the property management company side.
Okay, I'm trying. Let me get back over here. Got to log back in my Zoom. But I'll try to. Do I have any questions and answers? Questions there? Sorry.
I have on
yeah.
that. Go ahead, Marvin.
No, go right ahead, Monique.
Go ahead.
Let's see, there are a couple of questions. There is one that reads, are there any additional actions that can be done beyond home liens for non-payment of HOA dues in excess of 3 to 4 years? I think we can table that for the legal segment of the camp. Okay.
Thank you. I'm not looking for his name. Okay. Are there any other questions?
Yes, there are recommendations for a better, more positive community engagement, and also recommendations for reasonably priced accounts to specifically work with HOAs. I'm not sure that I understand that question, so if the person that posed that question can give a little detail in the Q&A, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, you have to allow them to speak on the audio.
I think they're looking for accountants that specifically work with HOAs.
Oh boy, this person is quick on the keyboard. Thanks, Sal. How much would be too much to pay a management company? Just a guideline for us. Okay, for bookkeeping, accounting, etc. So
Okay.
this is really where I would need for
We
Eric.
need Eric. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he can speak to pricing from
Okay,
their perspective.
waiting on the link.
Uh,
So
I'm
can
trying
we
to
I,
get.
yes.
unmute his mic?
Yeah, you can raise him, Marvin. You can raise him to a
He
panelist.
logged out. He logged out as a panelist. If he was still logged in as a panelist, I could promote him. But
Yeah.
But
he
he was
logged out.
logged in as a panelist. That's the issue.
No, he can join as an attendee, and then Marvin can promote him.
Okay, no, he's back in. He's back in. Hold on, let me
All
see
right.
if I
Thank
can.
you.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, this is what really happens in production. So you guys are getting this live and in living color. So
But it's not bad.
Yes, Corral, I have a question for you. It's Commissioner Cupid.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, if an HOA is using a management company, how can they have a better connection with the vendors, particularly legal services, because those charges can go up very quickly.
Hmm.
So how can they take advantage of the administrative function of a management company, but still kind of rein in on some of the expenses of their vendors, particularly the legal vendors?
Well, we found that direct relationships with the legal company actually helps to decrease the costs. That's with any vendor.
Oh,
We found that with our landscaping. We were paying at some point like 75,000 for landscaping for our property. Well, once we had a direct relationship with the landscape company, it dropped to 20,000.
wow.
So
That's
it makes
significant.
a difference if you're directly working with the vendor. Eric, he can speak to a management company. I see he practices not only in Georgia, but Florida and some of these other states. Yeah, in their contract, from what I've seen, they have a right to make a profit. So when they go out and get a bid for you, the bid goes directly to them, and then they send over with a markup the bid over to the board. So we just found it to be more advantageous to do some aspect of the community. And I'll be honest with you, we did everything. And the hardest thing to do was to collect on our residents. But the residents were happy with what we were doing, and they would come in and bring their accounts current. We did a number of things to foster a good community spirit by having get-togethers like barbecues, things for the kids, all of those types of things. And when they are happy, and we put signs in places where we've did work, meaning we've taken some of the reserve to pay for some things like was promised from the builder, like a playground for the older kids. We
Yeah.
took some money and paid for that. We spent the $100,000 that we saved in 6 months and
Wow.
turned it around and reinvested in our community.
That's awesome. Thank
Yes.
you.
Eric, you there?
he's saying that he's on, but he can't see himself.
Okay, I don't know about seeing himself. Do you see him in as an attendee, Marvin? All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and move on if you guys don't mind.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so vendor management tends to be one of the areas that we did a lot of our savings. In fact, our savings were so great, we discounted our dues for all of our neighbors by $100, right? We were paying
Wow.
$850 a year. We brought it down to $650, and we were talking about bringing it down to $650. And some neighbors, I just have to admit, everybody's not going to agree with you, right? So you have to sort of try to manage that relationship. All I can say, just from my experience, it was so much drama from about 30 homes out of 270. I
Yeah.
committed to just doing 2 terms. I believe 2 terms is enough.
Yeah.
I did 5 years, but during that 5 years, I learned a lot about managing a community, all aspects of it. Communications. I'm an over communicator, and you would send out messages, etc. Guess what? Some people will complain about that. You're sending out too much info, and then when you scale back, guess what? Some
You're not
people will say you're not sending out enough.
right.
So you have to do some training. We push the United Way training for board training. It's not specific to HOA communities, but it's general enough to educate you on some things, like the insurance. It was brought to my attention when I attended, and Marvin recommended that I attend. He was already a graduate, and when they talked about insurance and my fiduciary duty, it scared the bejesus out of me.
Of
But
course.
it made me go back and have a discussion with the board that, we all have to make sure that insurance, general liability, and D&O and E&O, directors and officers insurance, or executives and officers insurance, was in play. We had to deal with 5 different litigations, and that played a good role in making sure we were able to somewhat focus on our community, because I didn't have to come out of pocket for no legal fees. None of the board members did.
Yeah,
That
good.
alone allows you to go forward. Is Eric on?
Good.
He's still having issues.
Monique, do you have any questions from those who are tuned in?
Yeah,
that
let's
could be-
just address those questions.
Yeah, sure. We have one. Do you have a board and a group of volunteers to make this hybrid work? Hey,
Yes.
Marcia.
Yes. I think our most active committee was our social committee, because we believed in community spirit. And so they did a number of activities throughout the year. We went from having maybe one social event before we got on the board to, I say, 12 or more. And, people were complaining about that. We don't need that many events, but it made overall the kids happy, because we did pool parties. It made other homes happy. We don't measure running for the board by individual. We focused on homes, and we had about 220, 230 homes that were happy with our events. Christmas, Easter, um, what is that? Halloween, and some other major holidays were celebrated.
Yeah.
And that builds on the community spirit. You always have to think about community spirit, because without
definitely
some
agree.
community spirit, it's very hard to do other things.
I absolutely agree.
Yep. So I just wanted to make sure that we all are on board with that. But we can't dive into all of this in detail on this virtual boot camp, but I wanted to make sure I introduce it as such. Just from a modular component, pick your focus. And,
Yeah.
Financial services and accounting services generally is on everybody's mind. Okay.
Yeah.
And with that
Corel,
being, I'm
Yep.
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask, we have about 5 minutes left. You talked about some nuts and bolts of self-management and some benefits of it. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges of
Oh,
becoming?
yes, ma'am. I tried to mix that in, but again, you can't make every homeowner happy.
Okay.
Everybody has their own agenda. They want to push their agenda through you. I'm an enabler. If you come with an idea, be prepared to lead it.
It takes a pretty strong personality to me. You kind of have to have tough skin to serve in these roles, and particularly in a self-managed HOA where you're dealing directly with residents.
Right. We created a help desk to help facilitate.
Oh, that's awesome.
Some of those homeowners didn't like that.
Hello, everyone.
Call me. I mean, if there's a crime being committed, or what they perceive to be a crime, guess who they're calling? They're not calling the police. They calling the board.
Before 911.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I got a lot of calls all through the night.
Hi, guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that Eric?
Okay. Hi. Sorry about that, guys.
Please accept our apologies.
Yeah. Speak to the management company role and what's advantageous with using a management company, if you don't mind.
No problem. No problem. I did hear a lot of the comments. I just couldn't respond to them. I kind of want to actually go back, if you don't mind, just to get caught up. I did hear some of the questions regarding, management companies' relationships with vendors. We do know the vendors. we definitely can refer you to vendors, but the contracts that you sign with a vendor are actually signed by the board, not the management company. So for us, at least the management company that I work with and the one that I once owned, there's no profit in it for us for a vendor. The contract is actually between you. And I always recommend the board of directors always delegate duties. Always have a person that handles your legal on your board that consults directly with the board to determine whether or not you want to send someone to collections. So you see all charges. Usually attorney's fees will charge you a retainer fee of $1,200 a year. And then everything else after that, fees related to a particular collection claim or case that you may have going on. But there's no profit in it for us. Same thing with landscaping. Your landscaping contract is actually signed by you if you want the board to sign it, if you want the property manager to sign it. But again, there's no profit in it for us. Our profit comes from the monthly fee that we charge you, and then administration fees. For instance, if we have to do mailings for you, envelopes, or if we have to work, for instance, if they're overtime meetings, longer than they should be, or extra meetings that are not a part of your initial contract. That's really where the profit comes in for the management company. The benefit for being with a property management company is personal liability. I think the gentleman just spoke a minute ago, whereas if you're managing property yourself, people tend to knock on your door, where the property management company tends to be that buffer. So everything should never be personal. More or less the management company tends to work as that buffer. So therefore, any decisions that are made on behalf of the board that are conveyed by the property manager are not personal, it's simply process. That's the benefit to a property management company. Same thing. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. You're good.
No. Same thing with insurance. Insurance companies, your contract is with your board. We always recommend board of directors keep a copy of the contract so that you can see all of your costs per year, understand your financial report, which you will see your insurance is going to be billed annually, quarterly, or monthly. So you'll always see exactly the amount of money that's being charged for that particular service. Everything is GL code. We call them general ledger codes. And it's also titled, it'll say insurance, it'll say landscaping, it'll say insurance, it'll say HOA, it'll say administrative fees. Anything that you're billed for is spelled out in your GL code. You'll have a detailed report of what every charge actually is. Associations, some of them do also ask for copies of their monthly invoices. So you can match dollar for dollar so you can see exactly what was charged, where it went, and how much.
Very good. Now, when you share all this, it makes me think that there has to be some capacity building with those that step up in an HOA board, that this may not be common knowledge for residents who live in an HOA.
Well, actually, that's the thing. We always make sure that we have an open forum. So therefore, the questions are there if anyone ever asks. And also remember, financial information is public. The only thing that an individual is not allowed to see is whether or not a person, if they're in collections or not. If you've got a pending case, you can say we've got 10 residents in collections. You can never tell who those residents are. But the board of directors, of course, would know, because it's forced for the processes, whether or not you're ready to send somebody to court, or whether you're willing to accept a settlement, or whether or not you're ready to put a lien on a property. All of that's up to the board of directors. Property manager's job is to convey that information to the board so that the board can make an educated decision. They know what the costs are for filing fees. They know what the cost is from the attorney's office. And of course, that fee goes on, depending on how it goes out. But everything is very transparent. And I always recommend all boards, please review your financials every month. Board of directors also have the ability to log in as board members, and they can see transactions on a daily basis. They definitely need to be engaged. Property managers there to definitely answer all questions for the board of directors. And as I said before, everything is transparent.
Right. And we are running over time. So I'm going to ask you very briefly as we move into our next panel, Eric. For those that are involved with HOAs, if you can let them know what management company you work for, and also if they are working with different vendors, how can they determine, what are good prices for vendors, or which vendors perhaps have a good reputation for providing services with HOAs?
That we do. CMA works with, as you know, a ton of vendors. We are in, I believe now, 5 states. We always recommend the boards request at least 3 bids, always multiple bids. Bids are always going to be, you're going to see the price range. You're going to know if that price for the board, if it's within your budget. Property managers are always going to know based on experience whether or not if a price is gouged or if a price is honest. But remember that contract will always be signed by a board member unless the property manager has the authority to do it. Also, it's imperative that all vendors are properly vetted and insured. That's something that at CMA we do. By the way, I do work for CMA, Community Management Associates here in Atlanta. All vendors are insured. They have to be. We require them to have a minimum of $1 million and in some cases, $2 million general liability. Any association would also want to make sure, because if you sign a vendor that's not properly vetted or insured and something happens, it can be held liable for any medical cost that individual has.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Eric. Thank you, Corel, for helping us with our first panel, property management companies versus self-managed HOAs. I believe that there are some questions that have been provided during this panel.
We can take that offline, unless I saw somebody with their hand raised, but we require them to submit the question in the Q&A, and then we allow them to speak.
Okay, very good. So still ask your questions, and there still may be opportunity to answer those offline. So with that, again, thank you too. We appreciate your participation on that panel. And in keeping with time, I want to segue over to our next panel, which is zoning, land use, and development, covenants versus code enforcement. With this panel, we're going to learn tips from community development, zoning, and civic organizations on the importance of HOA involvement and collaboration in the zoning process. I believe we have Kathy Pickett here with us from community development, and particularly code enforcement of community development. I don't see Galt Porter on the line. If he's here as an attendee, I hope he can be promoted to panelist. But if not, I know we have two commissioners online who are familiar with zoning, as well as Monique Sheffield, who served on our variance board. So there should be enough of us here to help you with that topic as well. So with that, go ahead.
I'm just got to put up the agenda to make sure I have the names. So I know you just spoke to them, but I want to look and see if they're any attendee.
Okay, great. If you can look for Galt Porter. But with that, I'm going to turn things over to Kathy. Kathy, you are a regular for our HOA Alliance Boot Camp. If you don't mind introducing yourself again to some of those who know you and to some of us who don't, and talk about what you do with the county.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. Oops, I'm so sorry. I think I just lost it.
There you are.
Am I back?
Yes, you're back.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm Kathy Pickett. I'm the zoning division, I'm the code enforcement division manager. I've been with Cobb County since 1996. I've been in the code enforcement division since 2000. So I've been there about 20 years now. I've been manager of code enforcement since 2016. Our division is responsible for enforcement of local county ordinances. We also enforce things where different various boards have placed regulations on properties. Typically, I'm just going to kind of start, since Galt's not here to start, I'll just do something really high level.
Well, he's a panelist now. I'm chatting with him.
Oh, he is?
Yeah, he'll come in.
Okay. We typically enforce the zoning ordinance. That's the largest ordinance that we enforce, that speaks to the permitted uses on properties, what's allowed, what's prohibited. There's issues that we address. We remove signs off the public right of way. There's a nuisance weed control ordinance that we enforce for overgrown properties that are occupied or vacant or abandoned. And then there's also some solid waste ordinances that we enforce, and how these relate to subdivisions. subdivisions that have HOAs, and we do work very closely with a lot of the self-managed HOAs, and also others that have community or associations that are have managed HOAs. We receive a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails. How these differ from your covenants versus county ordinances is that your covenants, you may have HOA covenants that they are civil in nature, so those have to be addressed as a civil manner, which is, as Marvin had explained, through a lien process. You typically provide letters, and then if you don't receive the action required, you'll place a lien on property. Whereas code enforcement, enforcing the local county ordinances that are placed on properties, are more of a criminal nature. Each ordinance violation can result in fines up to $1,000 plus court costs and 60 days imprisonment. Now, it's not very often that individuals go to jail over code enforcement violations, but it does happen. And that could be for each violation, and each day constitutes a new violation. Now, your HOA's covenants may have, something in there about pruning trees and cutting limbs and things like that. There's nothing in the county ordinance that would require that. So a lot of your covenants may not be in the county ordinances. Where code enforcement comes in is where we have ordinances that mirror or are very similar to your HOA covenants. So if your HOA covenants say that you can't have a dismantled or junk vehicle in the driveway, there is a county ordinance to address that. And where you may be expending your resources to try to address that and place a lien on a property for that type situation, you can use the county resources via code enforcement to have that addressed. And typically we will go out, issue a notice of violation, advising the resident and the property owner that having that type of activity taking place on the property is a violation of the county ordinance. We reference the code section. We give them a prescribed amount of time to remedy the code violation. If the resident or the owner can't remedy it within that specific time period, but they're willing to take care of the violation, we'll often work with them for a certain time period. If they're not moving towards compliance, then we will issue a citation, and the violator would have to attend court. With that being said, it's just, you may not know what the county ordinances speak to. At the end of this, I'm going to put up in the chat room, I've got several links. There's 5 different ways that you can file a code enforcement complaint. You can call in, or you can walk in. That if you do that, or fax a complaint over, we can handle that anonymously. So, you don't even have to say that the HOA filed the complaint. If you want to go online, we have a program called Acela Citizen Access, and you can file the complaint via Acela Citizen Access, or you can send an email in to our code enforcement mailbox, just outlining the concerns. We can let you know if that is an ordinance violation, if it's not an ordinance violation. The last 2 ways, though, however, cannot be completely anonymous. Those you do have to disclose a name, a phone number. All emails are subject to open record. So if an open record post is filed, we would have to release that information. I'm also going to provide a link to the actual code of ordinances and Unicode, and then a link to the Citizen Access. I'm going to put all that in the chat room at the end of this, so you'll have those available.
Very good. And Kathy, can you speak briefly to what some common violations are that could be relevant to an HOA?
Yes, ma'am. Some of the most common violations that we receive from HOAs is businesses that are being ran out of homes. Those businesses would not be allowed to have any kind of exterior. Should be an office type business only. However, the business would be allowed to have one business vehicle that cannot exceed 12,500 McDonald's gross vehicle weight rating. Another common violation is outside storage. A lot of people, they run out of rooms inside their homes and they just want to store all that extra junk outside. So the county ordinance states that you can only have lawn furnishings and firewood stored outside. So, if, you know, the neighbor has a lot of boxes and crates all over the side, litter and outside storage are two of the probably the biggest complaints that we receive. Junk vehicles, of course. You can't have vehicles that are on the property that don't have a current tag attached. They're inoperable or in a dismantled condition. That would be a violation. One of the other largest violations that we receive is parking in the yard. All vehicles have to be parked on a hardened treated surface, and you can't travel across an unimproved surface to park in an area. No parking in the yard. I think that's probably the top 5 or 6 that we receive. We do get a lot of complaints from HOA about trash cans being left at the curb, and there's an ordinance for that. You can place your trash out at 6 p.m. On the day before pickup, and you have to pick it up by midnight on the day of pickup. So for instance, if your trash day is Thursday, you can put it out on Wednesday, but by Wednesday evening at midnight, you need to have it pulled back up to the house.
Very good. Well, thank you, Kathy. We appreciate you joining us this morning, and I'm going to turn things over to Cobb so he can talk about zoning and how that impacts HOAs, and then we'll reserve the last 10 minutes for Q&A. Good morning, Cobb.
Good morning. Hey, yes,
Okay.
I'm Galt Porter, and I serve on the Cobb County Planning Commission, which is as a appointee from District 4. The Planning Commission hears all zoning and land use related matters and makes a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. The Board of Commissioners makes a final determination. I also serve on the Board of Zoning Appeals, which is where people want, variances to the code on their individual property. In other words, they may want to build a shed a little closer to the property line than is normally allowed, or a accessory building on the property that doesn't quite fit the ordinance. So they come to the Board of Zoning Appeals for that. I'm going to focus primarily on the zoning process right now. And the first thing I want people to realize is that, you often see zoning signs, and the first thing people do is go, oh, they want to put this there, and they start saying, you want to do that. Well, the applicant wants to do that. The county has no vision in what people apply for.
Right.
Yeah, for example, I always use the example, if my next door neighbor, and I live in a residential subdivision, decided, hey, it would be cool to have a bar in my house. I think that would be awesome. And they want to go apply for that rezoning to change their residential home into a bar. They can apply for that. Doesn't mean they're going to get approved, but they can go through the whole process. The staff can't say, oh, this is ridiculous, we're not going to take your application.
Right.
If somebody applies for it. So understand that when you see some of the zonings that come through, that you think, why in the world would anybody ever do that?
Mm-hmm.
Understand we didn't decide for that applicant to apply for that. And some of them we get, are applications that don't make a lot of sense. A lot of them do make a lot of sense. Part of the job is the staff goes through and analyzes the application and sees if it fits the county code. They also look for if it follows the county's comprehensive plan, what we refer to as a future land use map, which designates certain areas for residential, industrial, commercial, and it breaks it down a little bit more than that. So that's one of the things that the staff looks for, as well as they go through and do their analysis. They look at traffic and parking and does it fit the overall ordinance, as far as, the ordinance covers a lot of things about how far the buildings have to be set back from the street and and the maximum number of units that you can put in a certain area. And that, so they go through and do an analysis. Then it comes on to the Planning Commission to hold public hearings and further scrutinize the application. And the staff primarily looks at a very technical review of the zoning application. Does it fit the ordinance? And the Planning Commission does that, but we also look at the more esoteric things. Does this fit more in with the community? Is there changing circumstances that may make this a good thing, even though it may not fit the comprehensive plan? Or are there changing circumstances where, yes, it may technically fit the comprehensive plan, but the community's changing and maybe the plan needs changed and it doesn't fit anymore. And then we hold public hearings where the public has a chance to get up and say why they're either in favor of or opposed to the application. And from that, we make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. And then the application moves on to the Board of Commissioners, which are, of course, the elected officials. And they hold the same type of hearing and process that the Planning Commission did on the application, and they make the final decision.
Yes.
So there's really three major steps involved in the rezoning once somebody's filed an application. And that, I want to make sure that people know they have lots of opportunity for public input in the process. You know, when you see those yellow signs go up, or sometimes they're other colors if it's not an actual rezoning, but we have things that we call land use permits. Excuse me. For instance, Kathy Pickett just mentioned somebody operating a business out of their home, which isn't typically allowed, but people can come and apply for a land use permit to allow them to temporarily operate that. For instance, we see it sometimes with people operating a small daycare out of their home, or a beauty shop kind of application, or an office, something along that lines where, you know, we can look at it, get input from the neighbors and evaluate whether in this particular instance, it's okay for them to operate that business or not. So that's a different color sign back to there. But if you see big signs go up, that's what alerts you to take a look at, and, you know, that's the point at which you can call up the zoning division office of Cobb County and say, I saw this sign and it had, and get the number off the sign. It will have a case number. Get that at maybe Z dash something, or maybe LUP dash something for land use permit. And they can look it up and give you more information. And if you have concerns with that application, you can email the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners with your concerns. And those email addresses are on the county website.
Yes.
And yeah, Commissioner Cupid also provides the public a extra opportunity, because the zoning hearings are held during business days, usually on a Tuesday starting at 9 a.m. And we understand not everybody can make those meetings. So on the fourth Wednesday of the month at 6 p.m., Commissioner Cupid hosts a informal zoning meeting, community zoning meeting, to allow the community to provide input and find out about cases in District 4. So that's the fourth Wednesday of the month. So the next one will be October 28th at 6 p.m. And we've been doing those virtually during the coronavirus time. So it's easy to connect and get in it at this point. One of the important things I want to remind people of, when we get a rezoning application and we rezone a property, we're setting the trajectory of that property for the next 50 to 100 years typically.
Yes.
So, and that sets also the whole community's, you know, trajectory. So if you If we put in a lot of industrial, that says what it's going to be for a lot of time. If we do a lot of commercial, we do a lot of residential. And the idea is to have a balance. And that's what we strive for in doing the zoning. Is there?
That's good. Thank you, Galt. Really appreciate you sharing about the HOA process and why it's important for communities to get involved. Monique or Corel, do we have any questions provided by any of the attendees? And Monique, you're muted, so I see you speaking. If you can unmute for us, that'd be
Okay. I always forget to do that. Okay, yeah, we have several. These are great. All right, we have one. Hey, Marcia, does the zoning/code enforcement apply to all communities, even those that are responsible for their own street maintenance, trash removal, etc.?
Yes, yes, ma'am. The zoning code is applicable throughout unincorporated Cobb County.
every property.
Every
Now-
single property, yes.
Okay. Now, is that the general rule? Because this person does not live in Cobb County, would it differ from county to county, or is that basically the general rule of thumb?
Yeah, it's generally the rule of thumb. I can't really speak to every jurisdiction. So the county ordinances are only applicable to unincorporated. There are 5 cities in Cobb County that have a code of ordinances. Some of those ordinances mirror the county ordinances, and then some of them are very different. So if you're in a jurisdiction that's within a city limits, you'll want to go to code.com and you can actually search for Georgia and then Cobb County, or if you're in a different municipality, you can search for that municipality and go through those code of ordinances. I'm going to put a link to Municode that will take you directly to Cobb County's ordinances, and then you can search for ordinances. And then if you are in the city of Marietta, you can go directly to those jurisdictions in Municode as well.
Okay, all right. And we do have a question for Galt, but before we move to Galt, there is another for Kathy. Portions of a neighborhood sit very closely parallel to a busy street that is only separated by overgrown trees and a path that was not intentionally made. What group is responsible for getting a noise barrier wall or a more secure separation?
If the property has already been zoned and there was never a requirement for anything like that, it would have to be done on a voluntary basis. We'd be able to require that something be done to a property act. So we would not be able to require that. It would have to be done on a voluntary type basis.
Okay, and also too, I mean, if it's on right of way, then you can contact your Department of Transportation as well. Right of way would be probably a 10 to 20 foot, well, maybe about 10 to 15, 20 feet from the edge of the road to the actual grassed area of the community.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let's bring it to Galt. Where are the questions? For Galt, at what stage in the zoning/application process should the community get involved?
I would say as soon as you become aware of the zoning application, that's a great time to get involved. You know, the sooner the better. You know, what can tend to be a problem is when people wait until it gets all the way to that final hearing with the Board of Commissioners to start raising issues, because then it's hard to really research and address those issues. So the sooner you know you have a problem with it, send us an email, call the zoning division, and, you know, make us aware of that issue.
And I'm going to hop here and just say, be involved in zoning continually. If you wait until those signs go up to learn about zoning, you are already several steps behind because it is a complex process. So there are a lot of communities that are organized, that have groups that address zoning on a continual basis, such as the Mableton Improvement Coalition. There's an East Cobb Civic Association. In West Cobb, there's people looking after neighborhoods. I believe there's one in Northwest Cobb. And I hear of groups trying to come together to start associations every day. The sooner that you can get someone plugged in the process, the more armed you are with information about what your rights are or what the possibilities are under zoning. If you don't have a group, by all means, feel free to just go to the Muni code that Kathy Pickett mentioned. You could come to our zoning meetings that we have in the community, fourth Wednesdays. You can just sit and watch a zoning meeting. But I encourage you, as soon as you become a property owner, this is something you want to be engaged in, because zoning impacts, as God was sharing, the quality of your neighborhood for generations to come.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And Gal, in speaking about zoning, you mentioned earlier about the yellow signs, but we have a question about the various colored zoning signs. So we have pink, yellow, blue, etc. Can you explain the differences of these colored signs, and should the community have a voice for all of these type of signs?
I'll start with the first part. Yes, the community should have a voice for all of those signs. It's the reason why the signs are put up, to make the community aware of whatever action's coming. The yellow signs are zoning signs. The pink signs are for a variance. That's what I was explaining earlier, where maybe somebody wants to, build a shed or a garage too close to a property boundary, because there's what we call setbacks that you're supposed to be from, or some other smaller change to property. They aren't rezoning it from one classification to another, but they want a minor change to the, or exception to the rules would probably be a better way to put it. There's the gray signs that are used for the land use permits we were talking about, where maybe somebody wants to operate a business out of their home. Trying to think if I'm forgetting a color sign. There's also special land use permits, which are something that's not temporary in nature. We had one recently for a concrete plant because of the high intense nature. Even if they have the proper zoning for certain things, we require them to come get further scrutiny through a special use permit.
Okay. And we'll wrap the session with the final question to Kathy. And the question reads, can cars be parked on roadways facing traffic during daytime or nighttime hours?
Okay, code enforcement really only has authority on private property. So anything that goes into the public roadway is enforced by Cobb. It then becomes a public safety concern. Typically, they will allow street parking if the street is not marked as parking. In a no parking zone, the vehicles have to be parked where the tire on facing the direction of the traffic. So you can't have it flipped around opposed. Like for vehicles to be parked on curbs or hillcrest where they could impede the safe travel of traffic. Of course, vehicles, should be operable. You shouldn't have one on the roadway, or or uninsured, untagged.
Thank you. And that's important. If you have an uninsured or untagged vehicle on a property, code enforcement can come and have that car removed, because you do see a lot of properties, sometimes they have, junk vehicles on them that detract from the appearance of the community. And also at 11:30, we'll have Major Owens with Precinct 2 on, and the police are responsible for addressing the vehicles parked in the road, I believe. Is that correct, Kathy?
Yeah, vehicles, whether it be a trailer or a work vehicle or a personal vehicle.
Okay, great.
Whether it was safely parked.
Well, I know we're wrapping up this session. I can't tell all of you enough about the excellent job that both Kathy Pickett and Galt Porter do in serving Cobb County. I mean, when it comes to the services that we provide, it comes down to people providing those services. And the two people that you have on here today, they go above and beyond every day in caring for our community. If you want to learn more about code enforcement, please visit them online. There's a phone number or email address that Kathy shared where you can make a complaint. I believe there's even an online form. Her team does an excellent job responding to communities because they want to see all communities thrive. And I know Galt, he's there every monthly community meeting. Even when he has zonings, he's going out and visiting properties, sometimes visiting with residents there. So I just really want to thank both of them for being here. And if you live in Cobb, please take some time to get to know the two people that were just on our panel.
Well,
Yes,
thank you.
ma'am. And if any, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. And if anyone needs to contact us, provide the information, certainly use county resources instead of HOA funds for the things that we can assist with. We're always available. We want to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the Cobb communities.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
So with that, Monique, I'm trying to get us back on time. I know you're keeping track.
Oh, no, you're perfect. You're perfect. We're perfect.
I hope we have our panelists for our next panel. We have HOA legal issues and challenges. And yes, I believe we are joined by Commissioner Arrington and also Joshua Jones. I'm going to say Marvin Arrington because now he's going to be wearing his legal hat of his law firm, Arrington and Phillips, LLC. And we also have with us Joshua Jones with Winter Capriola Zenner, LLC. This panel has attorney experts where they'll discuss remedies available to HOAs for non-payment of dues and various legal issues impacting HOAs and homeowners in HOA governed communities. So with that, I'm going to turn things over first to Marvin, if you can help introduce us to this topic, and then we'll hear from you, Mr. Jones.
Might want to go ahead and just start with Mr. Jones.
Okay.
I'll give him a call.
No problem. Mr. Jones, if you can talk to us about your work with Winter Capriola Zenner and what you do with HOAs.
Sure. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for inviting our firm to be a part of this. I'm born and raised in Cobb County, so I'm very happy
Okay, love
to
it.
be here today. Yes, my name is Joshua Jones. I'm an associate attorney with Winter Capriola and Zenner, based in Atlanta. We serve as the general counsel to hundreds of community associations across the state of Georgia, from the high-rise condominium buildings in Buckhead and downtown to small rural homeowners associations in Columbia County. So we are well-versed in the different challenges that community associations faced based on their geographic location and their needs. So as general counsel for community associations, we advise the board of directors for the association on various topics such as interpreting their covenants, conducting board meetings, covenant enforcement, reviewing and enforcing contracts with third-party vendors such as property management companies, landscaping companies, advising the board, how to address these COVID-19 related issues that have come up this year. And that's kind of where I'll transition now, is because community associations this year have been facing problems that many boards have not had to deal with ever before. Especially early on when Governor Kemp was enacting new executive orders, it seemed like every few days, every couple of weeks, that had a tremendous impact on how boards needed to take action to keep members and guests safe within their communities. So initially we were dealing with problems like, should we open the pool? Should we open the fitness facility room? Do we need to tell members in the community that someone in the community has tested positive for COVID-19? These type of issues. But fortunately, things have started to improve in the sense that the Georgia legislature passed a law that kind of shields community associations and other entities from liability in terms of a COVID-19 related injury. Now, that doesn't prevent litigation altogether, but it does provide a statutory defense in case an association was sued for someone claiming that they got COVID-19 on association property. But, you know, right now we're facing a lot of questions regarding how to conduct annual meetings now that it's the end of the year, board of director elections and stuff like that. And as always, when it comes to questions like this, every board member or every house owner needs to refer to their particular governing documents because they're all different. And I wish they were all uniform because it would make our job a lot easier, but they're all different and they all provide different remedies, different rights and obligations. So if you haven't reviewed your neighborhood association's covenants, I would start there. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Great. Thank you so much, Joshua. Marvin, are you with us? Okay. Since I
see him responding in chat.
okay,
So,
if he may be
but
paying attention.
we just keep it moving.
Okay, so we've had some legal questions that have already come up.
Sure.
And Monique, I don't know if we've had any questions from our attendees. If not, I certainly don't mind starting to dive in.
And I'm here, Commissioner Cupid.
There he is.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you, Marvin. If you don't mind helping us address the topic of HOA legal issues and challenges. And we're hearing a little bit of an echo, so you may have to turn off.
Yeah, it might be a phone.
All right, looks like I'm struck in now. Can you hear me?
All right,
Yep,
certainly
yep.
can. Thank you. We see part of you with the background, but we can hear all of you.
Okay. Awesome.
There you go. Good. You can go ahead, Marvin. So Mr. Jones spoke to us about the work of his firm and HOAs, and if you could talk to us about your work and what you've observed.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I represent homeowners and associations. I wind up representing more homeowners than associations. I guess I wind up getting my association work from those homeowners that come on boards. But I think, you know, one of the first things when you're talking about an HOA, most HOAs, condo associations, or community associations are Georgia nonprofit organizations. And so familiarizing yourself with nonprofit law is one of the great ways to help you in your service as a board member. I took a class at United Way called United Way V, which was a training session on how to be a nonprofit board member. And if my recollection is correct, maybe a 12 or 16-week course, but it is a great course to teach you how to be a board member for a nonprofit. Typically, you also in an HOA, condominium association, or property owners association, you will also have the Declaration of Protective Covenant. It is one of the central document which governs the use of your land. So we heard code enforcement earlier talking about the use of land and the yellow sheets and pink sheets. Well, one of the uses of your land, most people have single family residential. It's typically zoned R1, right? And so single family residential, and that will be important as we begin to talk about Airbnb, because I don't believe Airbnb complies with single family residential status. So there may be some additional use or permit or variance application that people need to do if they want to conduct Airbnb from their home. But the Declaration of Protective Covenants limits the use of your property and imposes a set of rules and instructions on how your property can be used. And so
You want to make sure you're familiar with that. So basically, you're dealing with a Georgia nonprofit corporation that must read and interpret the rules of the Declaration of Protected Covenant and how apply those rules to the Georgia nonprofit rules. And so one of the reasons we wanted to offer this training is to make sure that we help people, help educate them, again, on best practices and what to do. If you are on a homeowner board, the single most important thing you want to do is to make sure that that board has E&O or D&O insurance. They are the same thing. It is errors and omissions insurance for directors and officers. So if you are a director on a board, you want to make sure, the reason you want to have this insurance so that if someone sues you for making a bad decision, they're not able to come after your house. Please, first and foremost, make sure any board that you are on, nonprofit has directors, E&O or D&O insurance to cover any errors and omissions which may be made by any of the directors or officers of the corporation. So I'll stop there, but I know there'll be some questions. I see some people are raising their hands for questions. If you will, go to the Q&A section and type in your question in Q&A so that we can keep track of all the questions and answers.
Thank
Monique,
you.
got any questions for us?
Yeah, I do, as a matter of fact. And this one came very early on, but the question is, are there any additional legal actions? Hold on, the computer just jumped. Are there any additional actions that can be done beyond home liens for non-payment of HOA dues in excess of 3 to 4 years?
Well, as an initial matter, it's important for that individual community association to look at their declaration, their governing documents. There's going to be a section in there, or there should be a section in there called enforcement.
Yep.
And under the enforcement section, there's going to hopefully be additional remedies for the board and the association other than just fining and a lien. So if this is a townhome community or a condominium community, typically the association will have other remedies such as suspending use of the common areas or suspending use of the parking areas. That way, if a delinquent homeowner is not paying their assessments, you can prevent them from using the swimming pool, the fitness facility room, voting in elections. And in regards to the power of a lien, you want to look to see if your community is subject to the POA, which is the Property Owners Association Act. Because if your community is subject to that act, the association is actually able to do a judicial foreclosure of that delinquent owner's house. That allows them to go after the owner, even if they have a mortgage on the house or the condo, whatever, they can still recover those money without having to first satisfy the mortgage on the home. It just gives the association a little more power than without it.
Can you talk to us about the difference between a POA versus HOA, and if it's possible to make that transition?
Yeah, sure. And that's something that we're doing more regularly, is where some of our older HOAs in the area are not subject to the POA. And if you're not subject to the POA, you don't have some of the rights that the legislature recently, not too long ago, made available for homeowners associations. Many of those are related to liens and another enforcement rights. So if you're subject to the POA, and all condo associations are also subject to the Condominium Act, this allows the association to judicially foreclose on a unit or a home. Because traditionally, if you're at an HOA that isn't subject to the POA, let's say, for example, a homeowner has not paid their assessments and they're delinquent in the amount of $10,000. But there's also a mortgage on the home for $100,000. The association cannot foreclose that home without first paying off that $100,000 mortgage. So it kind of takes the power away from the association to recover that money that's owed to it. But if you're subject to the POA or subject to the Condominium Association Act, you can foreclose on that amount that you're owed without having to pay off that mortgage. So you can just go straight after that $10,000 that you're owed as the association. So it gives the association a lot more power to collect money that's owed to the association versus having, navigate a much more difficult process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Turning it back over to you. I was saying, turning it back over to you, Monique.
Oh, okay, thanks. There's another question. Please clarify rules around how much revenue associations can generate, such as clubhouse fees, etc., without incurring taxes and penalties.
So I think the association has the ability to collect as much revenue as
Dues.
possible through its normal operations. If you start printing association T-shirts and selling those on the internet, then you'll be subject to likely having to pay taxes on that for-profit venture. But as long as you are raising money through clubhouse fees, the rental of clubhouse fees, assessments, or anything dealing with the day-to-day operations of the association, I do not believe that there's any limit on the amount of revenue. Now, I am not a CPA, so certainly talk to your accountant or CPA, but there is no limit imposed on any Georgia nonprofit corporation on how much money it can make. So.
Okay. All right. We have a lot of legal questions, so I'm going to try and get through these as quickly as possible. But there's another. If a homeowner paints a home without getting approval and with colors that are not approved or refuses to comply, could legal actions be taken?
Yes, absolutely. I have one like that now. Mine is a little more complicated because the case I have now, the previous board authorized the different brick color, and now the new board is saying that the brick color does not comply with the declaration. So my homeowner is being asked to take down all of the brick of the home, which basically means starting over. So unfortunately, it looks like we're heading to litigation in that case. But as a lawyer, litigation should always be your last option. Try to exhaust all other options. We found in our neighborhood just being neighborly was the best way to do it. We allow people to pay monthly, weekly, quarterly, annually, just as long as you are making your payment. The other thing about the last question, I think, there's a 4-year limit on how far back an association or any entity can go on collecting debt. So you want to probably adopt a policy to make sure that you at least file a lawsuit within the 4-year period, because outside of 4 years, they have a pretty strong argument for the fact that you have not attempted to collect or filed suit.
Okay. Another question. How do we find out if we are subject to the POA or not? Should it be written in our covenants?
Yes, I believe most of the time, if you look at your covenant, your declaration, usually in the footer or somewhere in your covenants, it'll say that you're subject to the POA. And your declaration is recorded in the land records, where you should be able to determine whether or not.
So most, probably 90% are not, most HOAs are not subject to the POA. The POA just came around in the last 5 to 10 years. And so if your subdivision was created in the last 5 to 10 years, you probably are not. That is one of the reasons why we have the POA. The POA is the Property Owners Association Act. Just like the COA is the Condominium Owners Act. And those are specifically related to governing condos. And the POA is an attempt, because before HOAs or any HOA that's not a POA is governed just as a Georgia nonprofit corporation. And so there's no specific set of laws. And so the Condominium Owners Act and the POA, the Property Owners Association Act, were both done in an attempt to create a specific set of laws for HOAs. But you must get at least 2/3 of your homeowners in your association in order to amend your declaration and or bylaw, typically. Some declarations or bylaws may say something different, and if they do, then you want to go by what they say. But typically, you'll have to have at least 2/3 of the owners to transfer over from a HOA to a POA. Additionally, even if you have 2/3 of the owners and the other 1/3 say they don't want to be in a POA, then those homes will remain outside of the POA, because you must have each specific owner's approval in order to restrict their land under the POA. So what you would have to do in that case is wait until those 1/3 of the owners sold their houses and then make the new owners subject to the POA.
Okay.
Also, I'm sorry, I was also going to just add that it's not as you can't just adopt the POA without taking additional steps. So when you amend and adopt the POA, you have to make sure that your declaration and your covenants and restrictions are in compliance with the provisions of the POA. So you may have to amend your notice procedures within your declaration. You may have to revise your fining procedures. So there's additional steps that you have to take when adopting the POA.
Can you talk about
Okay.
expiring covenants? Once the HOA hits a certain year, and what steps need to be taken?
There are some HOAs that have a limit on the terms of the restrictive covenant. Most of those restrictive covenants last in perpetuity. There are some though that are time limited, about 20 years or so. Typically, you find it in older HOA, and not in anything that's recent. Also, is a way that you can, if your association is not doing what they're supposed to do, there's a way that homeowners can apply to the HOA to or to have a specific or a set of restrictive covenants removed, and then that puts the HOA in a position where if your HOA is holding annual meetings, you haven't had a budget in 4 years, then you may want to send them a letter saying, look, we're going to apply to remove the restrictive covenants because you haven't given us an annual budget. We haven't had an annual meeting. We haven't had an opportunity to elect new HOA members or new board members. And so that could be grounds for at least applying to terminate the restrictive covenant.
Okay. And the final question for the segment is we hired a new management company and discovered the prior management company did not keep or have any or produced any ledgers, and we cannot recoup delinquent assessments from our homeowners, approximately $10,000. Do we have any recourse?
Sounds like you want to come hire Josh or me. Unfortunately, I mean, basically, it sounds typically there's a contract with the management company. So the first thing you're going to have to do is get a copy of that contract. It sounds like what you're alleging would be a breach of contract or a failure of their duty to comply with the terms of that contract. So there could potentially be a breach of contract, which could potentially expose management company. However, I don't know if my friend Eric Terrell is still on or not. Management companies have a provision in their contract that say, hey, association, you agree to hold us harmless and indemnify us against any claims against us, including claims from you, the association itself. So be careful, look at your contract with your management company, use that as the starting point.
Terrell?
I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry about that. We can go ahead and keep moving with the questions. We can always provide access to the PowerPoint presentation as a PDF. We'll share that out. You can't hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I got some feedback because I'm on Facebook Live.
Okay. No, you're good. We have about 1 minute left before.
Well, just pose another question to be answered. I think that would make it easier.
Okay. Unfortunately, we are fresh out of time. We are headed towards 12 o'clock, and we know we dedicated 2 hours for this. And I want to be mindful of our panelists and to our attendees. If you've had questions that have not been answered, I hope that you pose them in the Q&A so that we can try to address those outside of this forum. I believe that there is contact information that's also been placed there so you can reach out to some panelists directly. I can't thank all of our panelists enough for dedicating your Saturday to being with us today so that we can help educate our residents. And I can't thank our residents enough for tuning in today because we really need you. I mean, we can't do this without your partnership, and know that you take on a lot of responsibility with very little to no pay and a lot of stress and sometimes challenges in running your own communities. So I want to thank you for taking time to be with us today and to be best informed so that you can help run your HOAs. Monique, do you have any closing comments for us today? Or Commissioner Arrington?
I just want to thank everybody for attending. Just wanted to thank everybody again for joining us today. And if you join in late and you missed, this is our 5th year in having this HOA boot camp. And as Commissioner Cupid mentioned, we cannot do this obviously without you all. So we appreciate your participation. We appreciate your calls and your concerns. And we just encourage you to continue to be involved with your local HOA and also with zoning, as we mentioned earlier today. So everybody be well. If you have additional questions, contact information has been left in the chat. Thanks again.
Very good. And Marvin, any closing comments?
There he is. we need you on
Silence is
mute.
golden, as they say. So
all right. Well,
You're on
thank
mute.
you guys. Thank you, all of you. Again, appreciate it. You guys have a great rest of your weekend. Stay safe. Go ahead,
Marvin.
November 7th for our Georgia HOA boot camp. We'll be sending out information on that. So thank you again to everyone, and we look forward to seeing you on November 7th.
Yeah, I think that one would be 4 hours. The November event would be 4 hours.
Okay, great.
So I want to definitely just regurgitate what Commissioner Arrington just stated. Come on out virtually and let's have some interactive discussions with individuals in specific groups that people are primarily interested in. And don't forget, use the help desk. I've sent out the information through chat to everyone to submit questions moving forward so we can issue you a ticket, and then we'll have it go through a process, and we'll try to be as responsive as possible to make sure that everybody's happy. We're happy, you're happy. And thanks for
Great.
attending.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys. You guys take
Thank you.
care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
We're shutting down. Everybody have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Mhm.